resources related to disability and education. We now begin our session for the day with a brief introduction of the speakers. I take this opportunity to welcome Smt Lathakumari. Good evening, ma'am. Lathakumari. Good evening. Good evening, ma'am. She is the Directorate Department for the Empowerment of Differently Abled and Senior Citizens. She has served as a government, our government in various departments. She served as Assistant Commissioner, Sub-Divisional Magistrate of Harapanahalli, Davanagere, Sedam and Gulbarga District. Additional Regional Commissioner, Bangalore Division. Chief Executive Officer, Jilla Parishad, Chamarajnagar and Kolar. Secretary, State Election Commission, Bengaluru. Secretary, Real Estate Regulatory Authority, Bangalore, twice. Managing Director of Karnataka State Medical Supplies Corporation, Bengaluru. At present, she is working as the Directorate Department for the Empowerment of Differently Abled and Senior Citizens, in charge Director for Child Protection Department, in charge State Commissioner for Persons with Disabilities and Chairman for Social Welfare Board. That's a great job, ma'am. Welcome you again. Next, our another eminent speaker for the day is Sir Basavraju, sir. Namaste, good evening, sir. It's a nice opportunity for me to introduce you. He is the former State Commissioner Rights of Persons with Disability at Government of Karnataka. Sir is graduate in education from Bangalore University and a diploma holder in special education and a holder of certificate in management from the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. Professional services and other leadership positions held so far. He's been working for over 3.5 decades in this disability sector. Sir, after joining APD, he's headed and developed programs for persons with disability living in urban slums of Bengaluru and rural rehabilitation program for empowering individuals and their families to meet their needs within their own communities. Expanded service to 14 districts of North Karnataka. That's a really good work, sir. He has presented issues concerning the development of disability sector in several seminars and conferences held in India and in other countries as well, like UK, Sweden, Netherlands, South Africa, and Australia. He has been closely involved to improve rehabilitation services for PWDs for over 3 years.
Yes.
His interest and commitment enabled him to found an organization of organizations as its founder secretary and the first CEO of unique organization. First of its kind in the disability sector, called the Disability NGOs Alliance, that is the DNA. It is known as DNA, and it has over 150 member organization. DNA aims to build the enabling environment and unified voice over the growth of the disability sector through its engagement with government and civil society organizations for ensuring just and equitable opportunities for people with disabilities in the country. Next, I would like to welcome my mentor, guide, Dr. Indumathi Rao. Thank you, ma'am, for giving this opportunity. She holds a degree in science from Bangalore University, post-graduation in special needs from Manchester University, UK, accredited doctoral degree for her work, Portage ECCD in South Asia. Professional services and leadership positions held. She is the founder director of a few organizations like V.E.D.A Shishu Kendra, V.E.D.A Manovikasa Kendra, and Seva in Action. Currently, she is also the regional advisor for CBR Network South Asia and she was drawn into the social work through ABVP and Hindu Seva Pratishtana since her college days. Very inspiring. Founder, regional coordinator for CBR Network, working in 9 South Asian countries, initiated in 1993. CBR Network has a certificate of membership with Rehabilitation International and was given UN Special Consultative status in 2005. Currently, she is the chairperson of Global Partnership for Disability Development, initiated by the World Bank Trust Fund, Advisory Committee for National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, a member of Subcommittee on Disability, NIPI, Regional Advisor, CBR Network, South Asia, member, Central Advisory Board of Education, member, Standing Committee of Women Studies, UGC. Over the past decade, she has also served as a member of National Commission for Persons with Disabilities, highest policy-making body between 2005 and 6, served as a member of Bangalore University Syndicate between 2003 and 2006. She has also contributed as a secretary to promote Inclusive Education Advisory Committee, Department of Education under the Government of Karnataka. As a member, Advisory Board on Special Needs, NCERT, New Delhi. She is a member of Zonal Coordination Committee, Rehabilitation Council of India, Advisory Member for National Commission for Women, Special Section for Women with Disabilities. She is also an academic advisor for CBR HRE for Bangalore University. Here are some of the major publications that she has made an impact and influence on many of her students and disciples. She has authored a few books in the area of disability, CBR Digital Resource Kit, Right to Equity to Women with Disabilities, Right to Opportunity, a database on disability are some of her original works. She is also a co-author of the series of books From Panchayat to Parliament, along with Dr. Einar Helander. Moving away from labels, Portage to Every Village, Inclusiveness in Schools are her other publications. A few of her other publications are Trinetra, Village Disability Registers, Digital IEP, Portage Early Childhood Intervention, Omar, TALC, Reading Test are some of the software technologies developed by CBR Network to reach the villagers. ICT for persons with disabilities, accessibility norms and guidelines, accessible sanitation for women with disabilities and some of her other publications. Digital version of these books by Mr. David Werner for Indian users. Thank you everyone, and a warm welcome to all of you again. Over to you.
Thank you, Lataji. We request Lataji to share her concerns and viewpoints on the national policy on disability. So, without really discussion on other aspects, we would directly want to hear from Srimati Lataji and then take it forward. Over to you, Lataji.
Thank you. Who has seen the wind, neither you nor I, but when the leaves hang trembling, the wind is passing through. Who has seen the wind, neither you nor I, but when the trees bow their heads down, the wind is passing by. These are the lines by the Victorian poet Christina Rossetti. So it reminds me, many great souls really working relentlessly for the upliftment of PWDs, for the welfare of PWDs. Sometimes we may miss to notice, recognize, or acknowledge, but really we could feel. So with this note, I take this opportunity to thank and also congratulate the IRIEC, International Resource Center on Inclusive Education and CBR, and also Dr. Indumathi Rao, Madam Ji, and also the panelist Basavraju. So I'm grateful for this, for organizing this thoughtful event, webinar on this evening. And I'm really want to thank V.E.D.A, the virtual talks on education and development access, and CBR Network, Bengaluru. I feel this is a call of the need. So just, before getting into the details, let us, put a light on few facts.
Ma'am, can't see your face fully. We request you. Yes. Now,
Am I audible, Indu?
yes, you are audible. Now you are also visible.
Yeah,
We also want to see you.
Thank you. The existing national policy for persons with disabilities was adopted in 2006. So since then, a number of developments has taken place in disability sector, which include signing of United Nations Convention on Rights of Persons with Disability by India in October 2007, and enactment of Rights of Persons with Disability Act 2016 in line with this convention, and the adoption of National Education Policy 2020, which promotes inclusive education. And also we have our great constitution, which guarantees freedom, justice, and dignity of all citizens, including PWDs, without any discrimination, which implies inclusive society for all. Further, we know that disability is a state subject by virtue of entry of list 2nd of the Constitution. The states are bound to initiate welfare measures under directive principles of state policy, and we have a schedules 11 and 12 of our Indian Constitution, which ensures and it mandates local governments like panchayat, urban local bodies to take up the welfare measures for the under the weaker section of the society. So we know that the principles, areas of intervention of existing policies, as we all know, so early intervention, identification, rehabilitation, HR development, education, employment, barrier-free environment, social protection, research, sports, recreation, and cultural activities. And now, so actually now the present policy, which is really has a new version of the existing one, and the present one, existing one, what I personally felt is, it has adopted many good things from the many existing policies, like, the universal inclusion of all vulnerable groups, including PWDs in the mainstream activities, are reflected in our sustainable development goals by the United Nations in a 2030 agenda. Then some for international instruments such as, Incheon strategy for Asia Pacific decade for PWDs, that is for 2013 to 2022, which emphasizes 10 major goals for PWDs. And also we have Shandai framework for risk management, and we have our own national legislations already existing one. So after all seeing this one, I personally felt the Government of India has a strong commitment for the empowerment of PWDs, persons with disabilities. And to add to all, we have an exclusive department, PWD department, under the Department for the Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities, was created in 2012 under the Ministry of Social Justice on the policy issues, empowerment, to give a great emphasis on policy issues and also implementation of schemes and programs for the PWDs. And we know it actually. The government has a government. It's working in a broader perspective. Social empowerment of PWDs in a social empowerment. We talk about physical empowerment, educational, and economical one. So with this one, we know the purpose of this policy is to, we feel, it shows that, the clear commitment of the government to empower and, empowerment and inclusion of PWDs, and providing a detailed mechanism for creating environment for their participation in the society. And we know that our now proposed draft policy is having a vision to build a inclusive society in which equal opportunities are provided for the growth and development of PWDs, so that they can lead productive, safe, and dignified lives. I personally feel, I know this draft is, it's been a carefully drafted in a 14 chapters, and each chapter envisages the importance of empowerment of PWDs, then upliftment of their living standards in all aspects, in a holistic way. And also, I personally, while going through the draft, the very catchy lines in the introduction chapter first is itself is, the quote by the Rabindranath Tagore: "The problem is not how to wipe out the differences, but how to unite with the differences intact," with a great line. And also one more thing I want to emphasize over here is the chapter 7th. While going through it, as since I'm an administrator, so I felt these are the words right out of my mouth while going through that chapter. So which emphasizes on the skill development and employment, and it talks about a dedicated national level employment portal for PWDs, and that assures it will be developed with all advanced accessible features to meet the right standards of accessibility. That's really very impressive. Then portal will have an information such as skill training available at different locations, vacancies in different industry houses, including government agencies, nature of job, workplace, eligibility criteria, recruitment process, counseling, service, etc. So this portal will serve as a one-stop shop for employment opportunities for PWDs. And this portal will also serve as a knowledge repository and employment of PWDs. So this is, and other chapter is also disability data management, 14th chapter. That's really, I felt it is a call of the hour. After going through the present draft national policy for PWDs 2021, I personally felt, my heart felt, at least we have this policy in our hand, draft in our hand, and I want to express this is my sincere appreciation for the remarkable effort put forth by the draft committee and their entire team for making this document to happen. And with this note, I leave the platform to all to let knowledge come from all directions. Thank you for inviting me for today's evening for this webinar, very thoughtful and meaningful webinar. And I'm grateful to Dr. Indumathi Madam Ji for making me part of your team. It's my honor. With this note, I leave it to you, Indu, and the team. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that very introductory preamble. So we know that the intentions are really laudable. The Government of India has made a very honest attempt to come out with a very comprehensive policy. So we are here to make it, to give suggestions how to make it even still better, and so that it is implementable and is doable, and it can bring some positive changes for a majority of people with disabilities in India. So that is something very important. Thank you very much, Madam, for sparing your valuable time. Now I request Sri Basavraju sir to share his views and presentation. Thank you.
Sure. Ma'am, can I request you to upload my presentation, please?
Yeah, I'm requesting Bhavani to share.
Yeah.
Bhavani.
Oh. So first of all, thank you very much. It has been a great opportunity. I know the people who have been part of these discussions, they're all deeply involved in this work, like Mrs. Suti Kakkad, Dr. Rangashahi, and many others. We are so happy that with their guidance and with their support, we can do a lot. Like Dr. Indumathi ji said, I think our role is basically to look at it, how we can make this the policy more relevant, and it's going to serve the purpose. So that's the purpose in which we're all trying to deliberate and look at it. And Bhavani, can you just go to the first slide, please? See, I'm just trying to look at, I'm sure there's a detailed presentation by Dr. Indumathi ji. Therefore, I'm not looked at every aspects of it. I'm looked at from the point of view of, what could be better and what should this document contain. I looked at from that angle. I'm sure when Madam speaks, she will speak at a very length and she will give you a lot more in depth. So that is the very purpose why I am not really included. Now, for me, the key areas, basically the policy is great, very well drafted, but I felt it's important that somewhere the policy should also give us a kind of a present situation. So what is the current situation? What is the current, where we are? So that it will give us a kind of a starting point where we need to go. And that is the reason why I think somewhere there should be some level of in-depth situation and where we are today, where we want to go. So any policies that should include, I think that seems to be strengthened in my opinion. And the second aspects I'm looking at, the roadmap for effective use of existing resources. See, we already have quite a lot of resources built, be it NGO resources or academic institutions or many colleges. The work has been done quite tremendously, both by government and the other resource organizations. The point is, how do we really use these resources more effectively? And there should be some amount of, clarity, and that policy has to bring in. And so that the future, we will be developing on what we already have. The most important thing in our experience, we all know that we have been doing a lot of work, but unfortunately, where we can improve is the effective implementation. So the challenge has always been the intentions are good. We really wanted to do good. Somewhere the monitoring and implementation aspects has to be strengthened. Then we will be able to do a lot more good job. And there is some way we can measure it also, how we are trying to, what directions we are taking, how much we are achieving, and where is the critical gap we should be able to. I think somewhere in the policies, I felt that aspects has to be strengthened a bit more. Of course, the most important thing in the policy is the role of the state government, because the disability is a state subject, the role of state governments and the Panchayat Raj institution, and particularly local bodies, both urban local bodies and the rural local bodies are very, very critical, because at the end of the day, a lot of implementation happens at that level and they're very directly connected. I think that aspects has to be strengthened a bit more. So if you're able to do a lot more work around the role of, particularly the local bodies, because they do have resources. About 5% of the developmental resources is quite a substantial resources. I think a better guidelines and better directions, a better preparation would give us a lot more better output, and inclusion can happen much more in a better way. Also, in terms of, like everywhere in any policy, we would look at it, some amount of time frames. I know it's very difficult for everything to come. At least a broad time frame would help us to get a directions, how much we need to achieve, at what speed we are going. So in the act itself says by which time what we achieve. But I think in the policies, that timeline seems to be one issue that has to be really, get little more clarity and little more work that has to be done around that. And as all of us know, resource allocation for the implementation of each department is critical, because the disability is a subject which is spread over all departments. It's not just only Ministry of Social Empowerment and Justice Department. It is by all the department. See, unfortunately, we do not have the kind of resources that each of the department allocating, the kind of a plan what they have, and with that resources, how much can be achieved. So I think the policy should also very clearly emphasize that each department must somewhere say that what is the resources they are allocating for specifically for a disability related work, being it education or employment or any department, and that budgetary provision should be sort of mentioned very clearly, and it should be publicly available so that we know there is a lot more work that can happen with that resources. Because today, in our experience, because in the absence of this data, this information, there is a duplication of work, and there is no clarity on where the resource is going to come from, how much we can achieve, and what's the time frame. So that I think the policy should also include not only our department, all rest of the department should emphasize on the kind of resources they are allocating and the kind of plans what they have, and it is publicly available so that the people with disability, the family can become more independent. Of course, in terms of little more emphasis on a lot of remote. India is a very huge country which has got not just Bangalore, Delhi kind of cities, because we need to have an eye, particularly in a rural India, a tribal area, a remote area. What is the special emphasis, the special work that we are going to do? And if that is not being mentioned, then every chances these children will be denied. Although the Act says very clearly, but these children will be denied and they may not be able to get the resources. So therefore, I think the specific mention of rural and tribal areas and the remote rural areas is very, very important. We need to make sure that that's need to be getting incorporated. Next slide, please. Moving on to the stakeholders. I look at it. Particularly there's a lot of role needs to be played by local bodies in implementation, both in urban rural areas. The engagement of the parents and the carers and the local people is very, very critical for the implementation and also taking part. See, we know that in our country, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. We cannot only leave the job to people, only administration. I think there's some role need to be played by the civil society, the parents. I think we need to really see how we can bring them into the space. Particularly, the role of parents and carers have a huge role in building ecosystem and also meeting the localized needs. Because many a time for this kind of support, people are still coming to larger cities, and therefore I think we need to empower and give minimum skills to the parents and the local bodies so that the needs of these people are met at the local level. And maybe it can, foundation can happen. For extra support, it can always come to the larger cities. I think the emphasis should be how do we empower, how do we give skills, how do we support more for them? That aspect has to be strengthened in the policy. And a most important thing is, we're a vast country, as I told you, any program that we develop, it needs to be very culturally appropriate, because many a time, if we don't take into consideration the culture, the local situation, the inclusion becomes not natural. So therefore, I think there should be an emphasis on natural way of doing things, using more and more local resources. The CBR seems to be one of the strategy which will really ensure that. So I don't see in a document much of emphasis on the kind of strategy what they're going to follow. So therefore, I think a lot of emphasis should be provided on the community-based kind of a work, so that the local people can engage and really do some quality work, so the quality of people with disabilities life will really improve. The next slide, please. See, I'm sure there is a mention of the data capturing, and unfortunately, this data capture today, like whatever each one thinks is relevant, because for us the data capturing should have a minimum standards, and if they don't have a standards, we will not be able to use the data. we will not be able to use data and make a kind of a data-driven decision. So I think not only having this, platforms and systems, I think we should also look around minimum standards that what we need to achieve. Any data that captured, what is the minimum data they need to capture, how they need to capture, the standards we need to emphasize. So I think there needs to be a mention around what is the minimum standard that they need to use. And this important for us because any policies or any program that we are designing today, we lack data. And therefore, without the data, the allocation of resources and misspending of many of the resources which we have been experiencing for quite a number of years, we will be able to minimize those wastages. And of course, the technology is the doer today, and people with disability, because of various reasons, technology can do a lot good, particularly wherever the lot of traveling and all that required, that can be minimized. Expert support and all the support can be used through technology, and lot of resources needs to be invested on developing these kind of strategies and resources, because today parents have to spend a huge amount of resources, parents and people with disability, simply to get certain assessment, certain kind of services. I think that we have to keep in mind and minimize those kind of unnecessary expenditure. The data must be available at every level, because we all make plans right at the village level, the block level, the district level. I think it is not just enough if you maintain the data at the state level. The data has to be maintained right up to the village level, at the block level, and the district level, so that the local planning, local execution, and of course, this data can go up to the national level. I think the emphasis should be data should be made available at the every level, and the mechanism to collect the data, update the data, and the kind of system that we want to use is critical. I think that is one area we need to emphasize and put a lot more work around that. The ownership, again, particularly for capturing the data and uploading data in a particular time frame, we need to emphasize, and we must invest more on training, because today the minimum understanding on how to enter, how to do is a big difficulty, because some of the data that is available today, we are not able to use it. Of course, because the amount of training what many of these people have is very limited. I think the emphasis should be, how do we at least have a basic training, at least provide a minimum standard kind of a support, so that they will have the realistic understanding. So we will at least move towards the global level of capturing the data. Today, it only talk about 2 to 3%, but I'm sure each one of us know the disability percentage is anywhere between minimum 12 to 15%. If we have to move in this direction, the lot of training and the tools and the techniques is critical. We need to make an investment around that, and we need to emphasize around that. The policy document should capture some of these critical aspects of it. The next, Bhavani. I think one of the biggest challenge which we have been facing, in the disability sector is the human resources. And because when we talk about the human resources, it's just not enough if we have a special teachers. It's not just enough if we have a therapist. We need to have human resources at every level. We might need to come off with certificate courses, diploma courses. A lot of parents can get involved. And of course, no doubt that we need to have the highly qualified people, but the real execution can only happen at the various level. And therefore, I think we need to ensure that how do we really have a strategy to develop a lot of human resources towards developing quality rehab services, because early intervention, preparations for schooling, preparations for adulthood, and lifelong services can only happen with the trained human resources. And if you don't have, these people will be denied the lot of opportunities. Simply spending without a quality work will also not give us the results. So therefore, we need to address this issue in a holistic way. And particularly academic institutions, some of them played some role. I think a lot of emphasis should be the academic institution doing some local research and local studies is very critical. At the same time, they need to come up with a lot of courses, so various levels of courses which are important and which are really going to make a quality life for people with disability and their families. So therefore, there should be a dedicated, a chapter on the particular human resource development and the role of academic institutions and emphasize, so that the things can change in at least in 5 to 10 years time. Since the disability is a state subject, and we have to because at least we also said very clearly, I think the state should have the independence to have their own policy on human resource development. Depending on the national policy, such a huge country is difficult. I think it should be mentioned in the document that when the state will have their own independent body to accreditate, develop courses and support more human resources based on the local need, based on the requirement. I think that emphasis would really critical, in my opinion, for the development of disability sector. And moving on, particularly very, very poor infrastructure we have for the disability sector as a whole. Many, if you go to any hospitals or any system today, the amount of people with disability, what we have, the amount of infrastructure, what we have is very, very inadequate. I think the lot of emphasis only on, in terms of giving social benefits. I think we should now start move towards developing quality infrastructure, quality equipments, quality support, so that the people with disability become independent and they become contributing members, rather than all the time waiting for government to provide some concessions. I think we need to move away from that mindset to see we will invest on their education, their rehabilitation, their future, so that they become really contributing members. They're not dependent. So I think the human resources is very, very critical in achieving that particular element of it. Next slide, please. Next slide, Bhavan. And all of us know, we are increasingly, the intellectual disabilities numbers are going up, and many other complicated, severe and profound disabilities are also there. I think we are not at all using the assistive technology in a very effective and a creative way. So therefore, the role of assistive technology and investment, particularly the platforms and the training and all that, is very, very critical. And I think if we are able to invest more on this, India can really provide not only this support to our own people, even rest of the developing countries as well. So we need to look at this as an opportunity to not only our people, we also can serve a lot better to all the developing countries. I think that is where today many carers and the parents are engaged to look after their children. I think the moment when you provide good quality assistive technologies, assistive support, many of them can feed up, they can become productive, and these children also can be independent. So therefore, we need to adopt and emphasize on moving on to a new, assistive technology and invest more around that. And this would really give us more opportunity to reach people and to minimize our expenditure on them in the long run. In terms of platforms, although there has been an emphasis on platform, I think the work that has to happen is a lot more, in my opinion. Particularly, there are different departments and convergence of all these departments, because the disability is engaged with multiple departments, multiple stakeholders. The platform should be able to converge all this data and give us kind of the directions, and also minimize the challenges and the difficulties that people with disabilities and families are facing today. I think the thought should be how to develop more platforms, how to develop on systems and structure, rather than emphasis should be only on delivery. I think we should move beyond delivery, service delivery. We should build on adequate system structure, so that people with disability, other stakeholders can able to manage independently with minimal or a less support from us. And this should be our goal, and this should be our focus in the whole policy. Next, please. Next slide. This is the last slide I thought. I think the larger society role is very, very critical. And of course, of late, we have been seeing a lot of positivity coming up. But again, if the disability has to be accepted, disability has to be sort of looked at from a right perspective. And I think there should be a planned campaigns on a consistent way. And there is no, kind of emphasis in the policies and messaging, spreading, positivity towards the role of the society and the kind of support what they can provide towards fulfilling the rights and aspirations of people with disability should also be part of the document. And particularly promoting the role models among persons with disability, parents and carers. And, they should feel proud to say, I have a child with disability and he is so-and-so and he is a contributing member of the society. So today, a lot of hesitation for the parents to really, because the societal perspective, the attitude of the society has to change a lot. I think there should be an equal emphasis on changing the attitude and the perception with the larger society on the role of the larger society in enabling, empowering, and providing the minimum, responsibility as a citizen, what they need to do, and not just finding faults with the government or somebody, and they need to play some role. I think we need to emphasize more and more on that, and also a lot of work today, even today. I'm sure all of you agree with me. Recognition or in a disability wise, or we are still secluded. I think in future, more and more recognition and more things should come in an inclusive manner. Because otherwise, we are now trying to be still separate. Although we have past 75 years, I think the time has come. Anything that happens, it happens with the mainstream. It happens along with the others, and people with disability looked equal in every respect, in every way. And this is what would really give us a hope for the days to come. And I'm sure a lot more other areas which I have not covered, because Dr. Indumathi ji has got a more detailed presentation. So that's why I thought at least I share my perspective, my thoughts, my own learning as a practitioner and as a grassroots level person would be of some value. That's where I thought. Thank you so much for this opportunity. The last slides, I'm sure, like Mr. Lathakumari said, I appreciate that, the last quote. The problem is not how to wipe out the differences, but how to unite the differences intact. I think, like Rabindranath Tagore said rightly, I think that is how we need to emphasize. It is disability will be there. It's only a question of how we adopt, how we work, and what is the role that we all need to play, at least net 10 to 20 years. Then we will see that we have a greater opportunity, greater rights being fulfilled for person with disability. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you, all of you, for the listening. And I do hope that there will be some questions at the end, so we'll take it up.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Suraj. I think what Lathakumari has shared from the government perspective and what Basavraj said with a blended perspective, because Basavraj has a vast experience working in the NGO sector as well as the government. What I will be sharing is just complementary to what Lataji and Basavraj has already shared. So before I start my showing slides, which can be a little bit overwhelming, because the entire policy, so the issues related to policy is like the mathematics or statistics. No one is really interested in policies, because we are very keen on jumping into action, but making a policy is a headache. So many times we don't see a policy, we just jump into actions and plan of actions and starting working without really looking at why we are working and where we want to reach. So I will be requesting everyone, I'll be taking you through the draft policy. We are requesting each one of you to copy the Google Drive link that is being shared with you by Babani. which will be again copied here on the chat box. And we want you to share your suggestions on each chapter, on each aspect on the Google Drive, at least by 3rd of July, so that we can consolidate everything, and we will present it in a way that the government can use it easily. Because I see the way when it is scattered suggestions, it is really difficult for anyone to go through each and every suggestion, align it, relink it. It becomes very difficult. So we want to submit as one single document to the Government of India, to Social Justice, and also we want to make an appeal to the Prime Minister's Office. So with that brief introduction, please, I request Bhavani Sushma to give a copy of the link of the Google Drive. So we will be collectively writing suggestions. It is not we writing suggestions and you approving. We will work collectively. We'll put all our brains, hearts, and minds together, and then we'll share. So with that brief one, so what I will be sharing in slides. So I just want those who are not very familiar with policies, I just want to say what is this public policy is all about. Now we all use Google Map. I'm sure there is no one who has not used Google Map, at least in this group. See, when you have a Google Map, it gives you a complete picture of where you want to reach and what are the various milestones or points which you would reach. And it also talks about how to go, whether by car, by aeroplane, by walk, and how and what kind of miles that has to be covered. So it gives a complete map. A policy is like a complete Google Map. But even having the best Google Map in your bag, in your handbag, it is not going to take you to the destination. You have to make the effort of getting up from the bed, taking the few steps, and maybe go there, take a bus or an auto rickshaw or walk, and only then you will reach the destination. Even if you give up in the halfway, also you won't be able to reach. So policies are basically a path-finding effort. So while finding path, it is not just enough to know the path. It needs a lot more other supportive system to ensure that we achieve the goal. So with this preamble, I just want to share about what this policy is all about. I want to share something very critical in most of the countries with my experience working in the GPDD, the World Bank, and in few other forums. I have seen most of the countries, there are 3 steps that is followed. First, they develop a policy. First, they identify the current issues and problems. Then they develop a policy. Then they prepare roadmaps, plan of actions, resource support, all that. And they come. Then the 3rd step is coming with the legislative backup support, the need for amendments, the need for new laws. In India, what I see is that the RPWD Act came by 2016, and now we have the policy. There was also earlier policy. I would look at this policy as revisiting the older policy, but there is also already a legislation that is already in place. So the policy has to take the legislation into account, and there are many other legislations, including Constitution of India. So it has to take all that into account when we are writing policy. So the policy for disability is not something new. It has to work on the complete ecosystem of policies that exist in India. So with that brief background, I'll just take you through the slides. So this policy has come, and it has come into the public domain in May 2022, but it has been there with the ministry for quite some time. But now we have access. So what is inside the policy? There are 14 chapters, and it talks about introduction, principle, vision, mission, prevention, early identification and intervention. Then chapter 4-5 talks about disability certification. Chapter 5 talks about education. Chapter 6 talks about health. 7 talks about skill development and employment. 8 sports, culture, recreation. 9 on accessibility. 10 on disaster management. For the first time, we are seeing that disaster management is being part of the policy because of many other initiatives that have been taken place connecting with the SDG goals, the disaster management leading to disability, and people with disabilities during disaster management is one of the major issues that is being discussed globally with the climate change and also in India. So that has been included in the policy. And the 11th chapter talks about social security. 12th talks about strengthening institutional mechanism and capacity development. 13 talks of protection of rights of people with disabilities. And there are other same measures that is listed in chapter 14. So this is basically how the policy looks like. Those who have not yet read, please have a look at the policy. So what is this policy? Like whether policy should come from parliament or it should start with panchayat. We always have a debate. So people like me, we always argue it should be from panchayat to parliament, not from top down. I don't know about the consultations that the Government of India has done with the grassroots level, district level, Jilla Panchayats, the Taluk Panchayats, village panchayats, and more urban local bodies in developing the policy. So, anyway, assuming that it has taken place, this consultation, because this is very important, like where this policy really comes from. So, the policy should come from the current state of issues and challenges in India. So, there has to be in-depth analysis of the existing situation in all
Ma'am,
sectors.
sorry to interrupt. The slides are not moving, so a lot of
Slides are not moving.
yes, ma'am. It's in the first slide.
Okay. Let me see the reason. Is it second slide is visible now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I think there is some problem. So I will not go into, I'll just make this view a little bigger. I hope you are able to see that.
We can see, ma'am. We can see. It's clearly seen.
Yeah. So this is what is inside. I am listing the policy. These are the 14 chapters which I have explained. And I said that the policy should come from panchayat to parliament, not from parliament to panchayat. So I assume the consultation has taken place at the district level, at the block level, panchayat level, or now the policy has been shared. I hope the discussions is taking place at different levels. So why this is important is, as Basavraju sir said, it is very important to understand in India, the disability is included at the state under the state list in the constitution. It is not part of the concurrent list, and it is not part of the central list. It is under the state list. It's very important to understand that, because then we can understand the implementation of policy a lot better, that who is responsible to do what and when and by when. And it is also a panchayat raj subject, as Lataji shared. So these are very, very important aspects for us to understand, like whom to ask, why are you not doing? Whether we should ask central government, we should ask panchayats, whether we should ask the state government. Sometimes all questions are asked to people, sometimes the questions are good, but the address remains wrong. So it's very important to understand the constitutional structure so that we know whom to ask and who is responsible. And it is also important to look at whether the policy has a complete alignment with the RPWD Act, because the legislation already passed by the Indian government. So it's very important to see that. And the policy also need to look at whether the RPWD Act is not just a legislation, it also has a lot of policy built into the legislation. So we also need to look at whether all these policy statements that is in the draft aligns with the RPWD Act. So then we say, okay, who is responsible? With my knowledge of the constitution, I think since it's a state subject, the state governments are responsible, the panchayat responsible. So it's very important for the state governments to come out with policies. So the government has come out with a policy, but it can be used as a guideline, and roadmaps can be prepared with the state. But who is going to implement is certainly the state governments and the panchayat raj system, because it's a state subject and a panchayat raj subject. The key challenges is whether the policy is developed in consultation with all the state governments, because India is filled with diversity, socio-cultural, rural, tribal, hilly areas. So 76% of people live in rural areas. So it's very important, even within the state, there is a lot of diversity from district to district. So whether all that has been taken into account or some other questions that is there. And last but not least is over a decade, the disability census in India we really don't know how many people with disabilities are there, except the 2011 census that I have shared. But if we really look at the 21 types of disabilities, which is now listed in RPWD Act, and 2011 had only 7 types. So we can assume in the last 10 decade, from 2011 to 2022, we don't know when the population census is going to happen. At least we can say 10 folds more and 3 times more, and 21 types of disabilities is something which we are really talking about, a very large number we have to take into account in the policy development. So 10 steps are generally used in public policy formulations, and we have to look at whether all this has been included. One is the database on disability. Whether we have the database, but as the policy very clearly says, all that we have is 2011 disability census data, and that is on 7 types of disabilities. We don't have the current disability based on the RPWD Act. So developing a database becomes very, very important for policy roadmaps and implementation, because without that, it is like groping in darkness. It's very, very important to have a robust database right from the village level to different levels. So that is very, very critical for policy formulation. And the current situation analysis is something where we have a lot of studies from CBR looking at what is the kind of quality of life people with disability are living. So whether we have taken all that into account regarding their access and inclusion to all mainstream development and to all the rights that is assured in our constitution. So we have to really make a good stock-taking exercise in the policy document, so to understand the current situation. And then we can ask, where do you want to go next? Then what are the priorities? Then when we want to reach, what is the roadmaps and plan of action? And how much time is needed? And do we have supportive legislation? We can really look at the RPWD Act. And how do we know when we reach the goals? We need quantifiable and qualitative indicators and process indicators. Then we have to look at our citizens and stakeholders are involved in developing policy. And the last one is it doable in the entire country? Because it is no point in having a policy on paper, because we have seen such many such policies in the past. So doable is something very, very important. And for that, we need to have a very practical ground on the current situation and have a robust roadmap and plan of action. So after this, I think it is very important to understand disability is not the responsibility of Department for Differently Abled Persons in Karnataka or Department of people with disabilities in Government of India. It is a multi-ministerial area. It needs multi-ministerial coordination, multi-department coordination. Having a single department and single ministry and expect them to be responsible for the entire disability sector, it is not going to work, because the issues are, it needs multi-ministerial coordination. So I looked at it whether we have really a mechanism in this policy for multi-ministerial coordination meetings at least quarterly, and review meetings, multi-department meetings at the state level to review the progress. I could not see much on this. So the other aspect which I want to stress is, since more than 76% of people with disabilities live in rural areas, the policy should have a special focus on people in rural and tribal areas is very important, and focus on poverty and disability is equally important. Focus on women and focus on aging disability are all important to see whether the policy is very robust. So I have looked at these 4 areas, and all these areas is further strengthening. All citizen rights fund. It's very simple. See, what are the rights of people with disabilities? It is same as any other citizen. Whether it is children, it is the same as other children rights. When women, it is the same as women's rights. So it is very important to ensure that the fundamental rights of what is assured in the Constitution is enjoyed by each and every person, leaving no one behind. So India has signed and ratified many conventions regarding the child rights. So we have to really look at whether these child rights are enjoyed by children with disabilities. I mean, the answer would say largely it is no. So that is why we have to have a policy. So, but we have to look at whether the policy has a special focus on children, especially children who are unreached in rural areas and in tribal areas. That is something very important. And human rights is something which is a very important aspect of UNCRPD. It is, in fact, CRPD backbone is based on human rights. So we need to really look at whether the policy addresses the human rights issues in the policy, and whether the policy is supported with roadmaps and resources. See, the more the time, money, and human resources we have to identify, because I have been working closely with the panchayats, though there is a 5% allocation of budget and we have roadmaps built for each district, nothing really moves. So sometimes I wonder, what is really stopping? Where do we have the gear? Where do we have the accelerator? Who is going to press the throttle is some of the questions which comes to my mind. So somewhere we get stuck. So we need to really look at whether the policy gives a clear direction for a smooth movement of the policy implementation from the panchayat to parliament level. The key highlights of the policy is the onus of responsibility. Of course, it says it is with the state government and PRIs and local bodies. But whether we enable them, there is no such support system that is coming in the policy to the state governments or PRIs or local bodies. So we need to really look at and recommend as a support system in terms of whether it could be an additional cess or a tax. I'm sorry to give such suggestions, but something has to happen so that the money is available to the state and the local bodies and the panchayats for them to implement the policies. Without money, without resources, there is nothing much that is going to happen. So what is that, how the government is going to mobilize that kind of funding, and how they are going to support the state government, and how the state government is going to support mobilizing the funding. So it needs a lot of measures within the state to give the adequate funding. At least if we calculate about this, something like 100 rupees per person with disability, we need a huge budget, which is not available. So we need to really look into that very seriously. There is no mention about the time frames or a mechanism for multi-ministry coordination or review system at central level or at the state level, departmental coordination, which I find this is something very, very critical, because a single department and single ministry cannot achieve much. So we need to really look at this aspect very seriously. There was such a system available when the first NDA was there in the government, but there was only one meeting, and after that meeting, I don't know whether the meetings took place, but I haven't heard about such multi-ministerial coordination meetings on disability sector. So it's very important to have this mechanism both at the central and state. And there is no mention about resources for the implementation. There is no mention about the future of special schools, role of RCI, universities in human resource development and management. There is no specific direction for implementation in rural tribal areas. When I say no, I'm just looking at other things, what I have said, there is. So don't look at this as a very negative observation. I have only looked at some of the highlights which we need to focus to give suggestions. But there are many things that is already there in the policy. So there is no specific direction for the implementation in rural and tribal areas. There has to be a special one, though we all believe in equality, but there is a need for a special focus on rural areas and tribal areas and hilly areas, unreached areas, because the challenges are far different from the urban areas. So India is not Bangalore, Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta. So we need to really look at this aspect very seriously. And disability is a PRI subject, but there is no specific roadmaps or policy direction in the document. In fact, it doesn't say anything about the role of PRIs. And accessibility employment all needs huge investment and time frames. The draft does not mention about investment in public sector, alignment with existing policies, legislations, and also with the mission mode programs, whether it could be say Accessible India campaign or the campaign by the Health Ministry. There are many mission mode programs. The alignment is not very clear except what I see with the NEP. So we need to really look at the mission mode programs and also aspirational districts. So what is that? There is no mention about that. We need to really look at the programs in aspirational districts and linking with the policy. And policy talks about convergence with ICDS, health and education, very good. but there are no clear strategies to achieve the same, because the same thing we have seen since 1986 in most of the policies, but nothing really happens at the Anganwadi level or in the primary healthcare or in the primary school much, because there is lot more needed rather than just intention. So that we have not seen much in the policy, like what is the key changes we will bring in to bring that vibration into the system for effective inclusion. The policy does not include in-depth situation analysis in all areas. It only talks about access to education. So we need to really look at various other aspects. Like I said, it is a multi-ministerial affair. The policy has not gone into details of the education and access or special education, supportive role of special schools. It is not there. So there are many overlapping and confusion areas, special schools and inclusive education. And we have to look at how we are going to play a complementary role and the role of RCA. You know, there are many issues. So the policy is quite silent on these issues. So the key takeaways, I have listed quite a few. Because of the time constraint, I'm not going to say. So I have made an analysis for each focus group, like children in 0 to 8 years.
Ma'am, can I just interrupt? Can you put this in a slideshow mode?
I tried to do that, but it is not moving. I don't know. There's some technical problem. But I'll be sharing the entire presentation to you. So please, yeah.
Okay.
So I have made a critical analysis of each stakeholder and what this policy draft has to offer. Okay, so I will be sharing it because it is quite a long. It starts from 0 to senior citizens aging. So I will be sharing. So I have made an analysis on where are the existing challenges. So, and we are looking at policy, whether the policy really addresses those needs. So the 10 important challenges, what we have identified is the need for community-based. See, using terms like CBID and all that may be fashionable, but it's very important to see that community-based rehabilitation can really work a lot, and we need to see that how CBR can be very supportive. And most of the CBR study shows that there are no simple village disability registers maintained in India. And there are no urban ward level registers maintained. And how can we develop a database on disability? So we have to really go from the usual screening and survey and camps to maintaining database right from the Gram Panchayat and to the urban ward level. And these registers have not been included in the policy. And health, there is nothing which really talks about strengthening the existing health care system at the block level, at the CSC level, to provide, say, telemedicine or tele-rehabilitation. We don't see much there. And children are enrolled by default or by design, but how do we really sustain them in schools? And how do we ensure a barrier-free environment to support inclusion at physical, social, and learning levels? There is nothing much in detail in the policy as a direction. So rural rehab support system, we ideally don't see much on how we are going to really make this wheel of change to bring in. And like I was just giving an example, giving a wheelchair which is meant for people to work at the table level to a farmer in the village will make him more disabled, because most of the activities in the villages are conducted at the floor level. So it's very important to see technology, assistive devices, what we are giving and why we are giving, so that we don't need such kind of that kind of analysis in the policy. Lack of capacity building of existing personnel, whether it's Anganwadi workers or health workers, ASHA workers, and lack of human resource development policy relevant in India. And RPW Act passed in 2016, and 5% development budget is allocated, but we don't see people using it. Though we have some mechanism in Karnataka, first state to come out with a circular and guideline for the district Jilla Panchayats to use that money. So we need, see, just having even an act, it is not translated into action. So we need to find out why. And no special programs for girls and women with disabilities. So you can read a study for National Women's Commission on equity to women with disabilities, and we have shared some of the burning stories from the grassroots and the kind of pathetic life girls and women with disabilities are living. But I don't see much in policy on to address their needs. And aging, India is the fastest aging country, and aging and disability, they go hand in hand. There is nothing much, but we in Karnataka, we have a vision document that is developed by I.A.S, with, which is coordinated by me and Mr. Basavraju, but we don't see much in that. So these are some of the lack of district level mechanisms. These are some of the glaring issues in India. So we have to see whether the policy can address these issues. Of course, Tagore has been quoted again. It is so important for us to start from what we have and build on the existing strengths. And I would not go into the chapter wise, which I will request each one of you to go through the chapters. I'll just take you to the slides. It is a paradigm shift because the policy is really talking about having inclusion, and it is moving from the medical model to more rights-based model. So they are all very welcome changes, and it looks at comprehensive support, which is very, very important. And the early intervention prevention is being shared, but I don't see specific mechanisms on how we are going to achieve that, because these things are also set in the earlier policies. So nothing much has happened for 10 years, so we can't waste another 10 years. So we need something very specific in early prevention and early intervention. And certification. So this is another area where we are looking at the UDID. Unless we make it accessible closer to the community, nothing much can really take place. So we have to really look at empowering the CSC level certification that should be available, and the interface with technology like telemedicine and tele-rehab is very much required. I don't see much on that aspect on certification. And at the same time, talking only about benchmark disability and high support needs may not be very relevant here, because if we don't look at people who are not yet under benchmark disability, if we neglect them and if we don't provide support, in another, if we go down the road in 10 years' time, a majority of them will reach the benchmark disability, high support needs. It's not going to make economic sense if we don't address those issues. So it's very important. It makes economic sense because it costs less money of addressing the needs of those who are not yet in benchmark disability or high support needs, but ignoring them completely, which we have seen in inclusive education, where the complete chunk of children with mild and moderate disabilities were left out. That is not the way. So it is very important to look at these very critical aspects in disability. And here we are talking of health. As I said, it is very, very important that we work very closely with the mission mode programs of including the health services, and all medical doctors, all paramedical, they all need to be sensitized on disability aspects. That has to go into the curriculum. So this has been mentioned in the policies. It's a very welcome one, but we need to see how well it is done. Skill development. I think again here we don't see the rural touch in the skill development. So it is very important to look at the indigenous skills, look at the NABARD programs, look at other rural development programs, and see the family traits. So that is not there. So it is again looking at very urbanized approach, what I see in the policy for the rural skill development. So we need to really have a very strong touch of the rural touch, and also look at the gender very carefully, both male, female, and also trans. I highlight this, which is very important. Sports culture, recreation, it is an area where it has to start, not just with the Paralympics and that takes place at the state capital, but we have to really look at the sports and culture inclusion right from the grassroots level, and integrating with all the sports and culture, sports ministry programs. They are doing a lot of work, but we need to really look at these initiatives. Starts because a majority of children with disabilities in rural areas, they have not even seen shoes. Whenever we prepared them, they are faltered because they could not walk with shoes. leave alone running, but without shoes, they could run very fast. So we have gone through all that experience. So it's very important to see that it is culturally relevant, as Basavraju sir said, and there is a lot more. Bhavan has looked into culture and inclusion. So it's very important to see that in all cultural programs, people with disabilities are included, and the curriculum is sensitive to people with disabilities. Accessibility, of course, the next session is on accessibility. So we have to really look at what we are looking at accessibility, both at in all three verticals. One is on transportation, the other is communication, and also the built environment. Just looking at built environment is not enough, so we have to look at all the three. So there are many guidelines that has come from the Government of India on accessibility. We don't see the mention of that, but we have to really look into that very seriously to go a little bit beyond public buildings. Building is one dimension of accessibility. Even if you take the Accessible India campaign, we look at all three verticals. So somehow the vertical which is related to communication and vertical, which is transportation, they are all very critical. It is not just airports. So we have to really look at bus stops and auto stands. We have to see wide gamut of accessibility in both rural and urban India. So I have continued that because it's a very big area. So there is a lot on airports, but I also want more focus because majority of people with disabilities and poverty link, we have to see that the buses are accessible. Most of the buses are not accessible, so we have to look into those issues very carefully. And disaster management is very important because we have seen in Gujarat that disaster management, how people with disabilities could not get the basic support when there was an earthquake. And we have seen that in tsunami, how people with disabilities were the last to get this support because there was no preparedness in the environment, which led to a lot of problems. So we are very happy it has been included. So I will not go into the other issues of social security, but I see that the government is also concerned about misuse of social security, misuse of V.E.D.A cards. So we have to develop a mechanism so that only those who deserve, they get support, and that deserving should be looked at not just disability but also from the economic angle, because as I said, a majority of people with disabilities live in extreme poverty. So we need a very sensitive approach when we look at social security. And the policy address many issues, but taking family as a center in policy development is very important. So who are the stakeholders? I would go directly into the areas that first we have to talk to families with people with disabilities, talk to people with disabilities themselves, and then talk to the service providers. So service providers, NGOs and others, they come at later stage, but talk to people with disabilities and the families, and they will say very clearly what they want in the policy. So we need to have that kind of direction. And the flagship programs we have included, but we don't see this inclusion in the policy, so which we are going to suggest. And as you know that RBSK is there, I thought sometimes I feel we have lost some opportunities of using Anganwadi workers and ASHA workers and RBSK effectively. The policy should really look into that, how we can make it more effective. So there's some data for those who are interested. So 1, 2, 3 steps is very simple. Please discuss with the families and consult people with disabilities. So I'm giving this as a priority steps. The step number 1, discuss with families, consult with people with disabilities, and then talk with service providers to know their difficulties. So it's very important to get the primary stakeholders and their concerns in place, intact in the policy document. So please talk to them. And policy wheel, concerns. The wheel will be stuck if we don't answer these questions. Who is responsible? What do they need for the implementation of policies, legislations, money, human resources, supportive ecosystem for systemic changes? Have you identified them? What are the roles and responsibility of central, state, and local bodies? What is the role of other service providers and others? We need to ask these questions so that the policy will keep moving. And this is the format what has been shared with you on the Google Drive. So these are the desired goals, current situation, problem analysis, opportunities, and how do we reach desired goals? How do we know when we reach there? No time frames and indicators. Please fill in your suggestions and send it by about Thursday. And we should be happy to consolidate everything. And we'll share a copy with you and submit it. And poverty and disability index. Disability should be also seen as an indicator for economic development. So if we can include that in all the development programs, a lot can be achieved. I mean, I know that it is not just one ministry, it needs a lot of other ministerial support to see that, but see that inclusion of people with disabilities and their quality of life as one of the indicators to measure the progress achieved by the country in development programs. And I'll stop here. Thank you very much for listening to me. I know it is a little bit overwhelming, as Mr. Basavraju said. So request all of you to go through the policy and share. And Sutiji is here. Sutiji, please guide us how we should really take it forward. We may sound a little bit frustrated and disappointed because that is part of our personality. We can't help it. So please forgive us for that.
I think you are doing very good work, but this raising of my hand is by mistake. I was just sort of sitting around with my computer. But I think the policy needs to be harmonized with the RTWP Act. But and many good suggestions have come forward. One is about the carers, because that was left out in the earlier policy, which was a very good document. So what Basavraju said was that we have to include carers, parents including care providers, because they are the ones who really give a push to the inclusion process. And of course, the older generation of persons with disabilities, because there is nothing that we have done for old disabled people. I'm not talking of the geriatric disabled. I'm talking about the disabled people who have become old, because now with good medical facilities, they are outliving the parents. And therefore, we need to do something for them specifically on a much larger scale. And one thing I would like to say is, what we can insist on is that we had it earlier also across board. We are marking of funds, 3% of the budget of all departments. It should be insisted upon again, because one will never get lump sum money for disability work. And we need to develop information because of all the new disabilities that are there. And the parents need to be informed, the care providers need to be informed what are the requirements of these new disabilities. The traditional disabilities, by and large, a lot of people are aware of, but the new generation disabilities is something that we need to work upon. Then one thing I always feel when we talk of inclusion, inclusion has many steps. One would be, we have to develop a strategy. More than, policy, apni jagah, that's an enabling framework. But the roadmap or the strategy to achieve that, those objectives of the act and the policy, they need to be developed. And that can always be area specific, because every area will have its own needs. First thing is, the process of inclusion would be acceptance by the person, the family, and information about the disability. A lot of people have no clue about what is their disability and whom to go to. They generally run to doctors, medical practitioners who have no idea, because they cure people. Disability is not a disease. It cannot be cured. So we have to develop information and of course develop it in a easily accessible format. then inclusion के लिए सबसे पहले we have to tell people that persons with disability are important. You know, if we get this message across that persons with disability are very important, are important to the country, they are important to the society, then this process of inclusion will start within the family and outside in the communities. Because however much data gathering we may do, but people don't come out with their disabilities, especially when it comes to the area of mental health. At least with COVID now, these mental health issues are out of the closet. But even then, people who are seriously ill with mental health issues will always remain inside, locked up inside. One, if they need a cause, I'm not talking about physical locking up. Then we have to use technology, as it was mentioned by Mr. Basavraju, that we have to use technology for development of ADL, activities of daily living, for education, for life skills, skill development. You know, this is where, I mean, I always used to think if we could give people a tablet or parents a tablet, you know, or a small phone with this kind of a app in it where they can access information. Today, smartphones are being used, everybody has it. You see every person using a smartphone, and most inappropriately because it is only for entertainment. It is not being, most people are not using it as an educational tool. So this is something that we can do, and Indumathi, what we have started in your analysis is amazing. Yes, we need to put this draft policy in the framework of the Act. The policy and the Act have to be meshed together. It has to be done. In fact, the old policy I always thought was very well made, but it needs to be modernized and harmonized. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Whatever help you need from me, please let me know. I'm always there. And
Thank
Sudesh
you.
is there.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sutiji, former joint secretary, so secretary for social justice, and she is one of the stalwarts to bring RPWD Act. So we have, now we know the critical role what she played, and Sudhiji, you can understand if there was some frustration in the voice. It is all because of all the journey we have gone through. I request Sudesh ji.
You all have covered greater ground than what I found in the child sector. So again, hats off to the efforts of the civil society and disability, and sort of I used to tell people I can put my money on them without even having to go into, you know, the antecedents or anything, because I know they are such dedicated people, and I think in some ways we have achieved much more for disabled people as a group than what a lot of things, I mean, and there are many big, you all know UNICEF, Save the Children, name it, everybody is working, Child Fund is working for the child sector, but they haven't moved beyond a certain limit, you know, not into the core areas of child protection or giving children a fair deal and all, whereas we have done a lot more. Thank you. Today we will take over, I think.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, we all have a great opportunity provided by Indumathi ji to be together after a long gap. Shruti ji, it was a pleasure for me to work with you and given
Thank you so much.
a chance to really
I
go.
learned a lot from Indumathi ji.
Anyway,
CBR K S Lathakumari.
I just want to, Induji and the team want to add 2 or 3 points which I feel are very crucial at this point of time. Otherwise, as I have also written in the chat box, in last 2 years, especially after the pandemic and then our NEP, so many policies have been floating now in the open forums through different ministries. When I received your notification for today's meeting, I went through practically all the line ministries to find out the coordination on which our NEP as well as this policy and the other policies, they go on, I think that is the main anchor, coordination and involving everyone. But I could not find the link. For example, our own ministry, MSJE, has a notification about 1.5 years back or so, or 1 year, I don't know, but I have shared it with most of the persons. It said the notification, gazetted notification, run into 1,000 pages, 500 of Hindi, 500 of English, and cover up the job opportunities across all disabilities under RPWD Act, right from the what we say in the government, the highest posts are category A and the lowest posts are category D, and across all types of jobs, opportunities. But when I look at whatever is being now circulated, even for the implementation of the NEP and other things, I don't find any coordination on that level, because when we talk about training, skill training, until unless we capture the spirit of these type of notification, how we are going to talk about the actualization of the whatever policies, whatever nice intents we may reflect in a given policy, but our frustration in seeing the work, same thing has happened with Sugamya Bharat. Shruti will remember 2015 we started on that. Today we are in the 7th year of that, and still we are talking about the same things which we were talking. So whatever Induji was also saying is very important, and for that, again, I was also trying to look at the databases. I think sometimes our problems are coming, our intentions are not reflecting on the ground of what we are monitoring. We are going for the easy way things which can be counted and all. But when we really go for a policy implementation, which is very high on intentions, unless we create those concrete things to look at whether we are on the right goal, it is not happening. And another point which I also wanted to say was that in this sector now, the time has come for us to also fight for nurturing of the talent within the disabled persons and not talk about the deficit models. That is the problem which is bringing us in terms of attitude, while in terms of the real evidence on ground. Look at the people on the autism spectrum, all are not of the same. It is a continuum. We say it's spectrum, but we always look at on the lower end of this spectrum. We don't look at the higher end of this spectrum. And even ICT is using that higher end people, but we in the sector are still not talking about the nurturing of the talent. Even our NEP missed that particular point when it was talking about the nurturing the gifted, but our disabled persons have not been mentioned. So that is another challenge. If it is reflected in this policy also, it will help the states to do. And my last point is, we are talking about human resources. That was a very nicely point made by our first speakers. My whole issue is coming till now, degrees and were only under UGC. If NEP comes in total effect in reforms in higher education, even our certificates and diplomas will be there. Earlier, the degrees were announced by the UGC. Today, this work is going to be done by the AIU, which will also work on the equivalence. So when we say state subject, we want it to move, we will also need to work on those type of certification processes. Otherwise, we are going to lose ground with our employment, higher education opportunities for our people. And my last point is, sorry, I don't know, somewhere I missed. Yeah, the legal things. Now, Supreme, this point is especially very, very important in the light of the disability certification. Now, certification itself is becoming a hurdle. And especially for, say, education or some sort of thing, a child cannot wait. If he or she cannot be identified, say, many disabling condition doesn't get identified at early stages. They come later on. And by the time you arrange for a disability certificate, the opportunities for education, employment, both are lost. So Supreme Court has told us very specifically, our chapter 3 on reasonable accommodation has got nothing to do with the chapter on high support needs or benchmark disability. And I think in our policy document, we need to mention this. How we will mention, that's a matter of concern, but we need to mention so that the policy is in real time. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. We have 2 more presentations, which is very critical, that is on accessibility. Once we finish, then we'll take other questions. As I said, this discussion is to request all of you to read policies and to share your valuable suggestions. And it is not just to listen to some of us we have shared, because I feel it is very important to talk to parents, families, and people with disabilities and get their ideas in place into their suggestions. And people who are working at the grassroots level, please talk to parents, please talk to people with disabilities and get their ideas and put it into the policy document. The Google Drive link is shared. Now I request Sushma to introduce the other 2 speakers. I think I'll start with Mr. Gaubar Tirolar. I request Bhavani to share the slides. Okay, Stuti, thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Gaubar Tirolar is from Sweden, as I shared, who is our next speaker, who is going to discuss on the accessibility, and he's going to slide. When I say about Gaubar, you know, whatever I say is very little, because it's one of the stalwarts. Kindly, okay, yeah. So Gaubar is one of the stalwarts we have. He was former advisor for V.E.D.A, and we have seen Gaubar as a senior rehabilitation consultant. Of course, he is a physiotherapist, and he has worked a lot in, in many countries, not Sweden. He is a very global expert, and he graduated in physiotherapy from Karolinska Institute 1972. I can never get the Swedish names rightly. Master's degree in public health from the Nordic School of Public Health, and a diploma to teach medical sciences from University of Uppsala. Uppsala, if you know, it is like one of our old Nalanda kind of university. You know, I had an opportunity to visit a great university, a great institute, and Gaubar was a senior faculty there. And Gaubar has done a lot of work in Uppsala and also in WHO, and promoting community-based rehabilitation. So since 1978, we always looked at Dr. Helander, Dr. Gaubar Tirolar to tell us which is the way forward. And Gaubar is one person who was ready to sit at the grassroots level and learn. So that is the strength of Gaubar Tirolar. And I'm very happy Gaubar is here. Now over to you, Dr. Gaubar Tirolar, to tell us how we can really move forward. Though you are born in Europe and a Swedish citizen, I'm sure you know India as much as I know. So kindly share us how we can really take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Indumathi. There is an echo in my earphones. Is there?
Yes, because you have connected from 2 devices. So if you can disconnect from one, we will not see echo.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, one. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. You are really well. I am not so technical. Thank you very much. Is it possible to hear with my earphones and this mic, or is it better without?
We can
hear you. We can
Okay.
hear you. Yeah.
So thank you, dear Indumathi, and namaste to all of you. To say that I know India is impossible, because every time I come, I get more and more confused, and I feel I understand less and less. But what is a fact which I can, so to say, establish with some joy and satisfaction is that I have seen an enormous development in India since 1975, when I first had the luck and privilege of being able to visit this country. I have spent some 6-7 years in India by now, from that time on, 1975. And every time I am admiring and I am confused and I am impressed by many things. As Indumathi mentioned, I am a CBR man. Somebody has called me a missionary. And actually the CBR manual, the classical CBR manual, was misused in a way as a Bible, which I don't want to do. It is a manual which should be applied and used practically. Most of us are relatively senior people, but we can go back a little in this whole history. The first 1978, when was formulated, some of you recall the beautiful idea of health for all before 2000. That did not really happen, but there were many people who did try seriously, including the head of WHO, including Indumathi's and my common friend, now no longer with us, Einar Helander. They really tried hard to make this a reality, and they also did a lot of efforts to realize that beautiful slogan and keyword of the International Year of Disabled Persons. I hope some of you remember it: equality and full participation. Equality and full participation. That was the device of the International Year and the following International Decade. There was some corruption of the equality part by forces that found it was too radical to request or to ask for equality. Equality is a great thing. And equality, if there would be an equality, that would also mean full access, full participation. There is no possibility of either reaching equality nor full participation unless there is access. So the access was also there from the outset. It was called universal access. Colleagues of the next speaker, architects, very knowledgeable architects in many parts of the world, were working on this, making the environment accessible for people with disabilities. Much of it is still focused on the wheelchair, as the symbol of disabled people is still the wheelchair. But most of us know that the mobility disabled are one group, if one may call them a group. They are all kinds of people, and a very heterogeneous group, if at all we should call it a group. But it is one part of the whole area, the society. I think that what we are actually, we have a much wider scope with CBR than one specific group in society. We want to change society, isn't it so, Indumathi? We want to change society to become, as Einar Helander called it, a caring society. CBR should foster and educate people and make them increase their consciousness to become caring and considerate, helpful, solidarity, if you wish, with each other, because we have all kinds of minority groups. And within the minority group, there are even smaller minority groups. Within the group of people with disabilities, we all know that there are divisions. We should speak of people, human beings. If we make a society accessible, it will be accessible for all. As so many of our interventions, activities, technical devices, architectural adaptations, So many of them are useful and advantageous for everybody. If there is a mentally retarded child in a class and there are taken special measures for that child, for example, the teacher speaks a little more clearly, shows his or her face to the child, writes on the blackboard or whiteboard, or shows good illustrative materials, which I have seen in some of Indumathi's projects, methods from Portage. All this can serve everybody. If you think that I'm wrong, please raise a hand. I'm quite open. I'm quite open. But this is my experience, and this is how I want to motivate accessibility, universal access all over for everybody. A society will be equal and will allow full participation of everybody in society, in the temples, in the elections, in the shopping areas, in the cinema and theater, etc. I am very glad to see this metro you have built. I am now in Noida, and I am really very much impressed. I was impressed when the metro was being built. It was a little overwhelming. It was so huge, those pillars and the thing over there, it looked almost monstrous, giant, but it works very well. I'm impressed. I know that in Bangalore it will also work very well. Here in Delhi and Noida, it is very good, and it is in many ways quite accessible. I congratulate those who have taken the decision and those who have done it, built it. It is really a great achievement. Even we go down, the metro is a special. The trains you have had for more than 100 years. The Indian railway system is excellent, excellent. Also in the way of accessibility, I think it is very good, and it has improved a lot during the years I have come here. I am quite impressed. I'm traveling a lot by train. I came from Bangalore to up to Shimla not so long ago, all the way by train, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. So yes, there is a lot has been achieved, and much of it has been achieved thanks to actually activism. Be within that, oh, I think that went the electricity. It is raining in there, so we have had 3 power cuts so far. I hope it will stay now. So thanks to activism within this area, which we call CBR, and thanks to activism by people with disabilities, the whole society has actually improved in this sense. I mean, as I said, everybody is benefited by better accessibility. Everybody in the society will benefit from more equality also. Now I will go a little more specifically into this. Where is that accessibility? I started by saying that it is not only for wheelchairs, well, wheelchair-borne people. Well, I think that is self-evident for most of you, for all of you. But we have to think a little in which way this society is developing. And sometimes we have to think twice. For example, this thing which you are just now using, internet, and this internet cyberspace communication, it's wonderful. But it needs to be very carefully analyzed and thought out in what way some people who have difficulties to access it will be able to access it. Of course, people with disabilities, for example, mental retardation, will have enormous problems to use this media. We know that. They need special education. They need some extra inputs, and they need some adaptation of the very computer, laptop, or smartphone, or whatever they are using. That must be kept in mind. In Sweden, there is a common friend of ours, Thomas, working actively on this to make internet more accessible to elderly people. It's the same kind of problem. I'm not so very good at the smartphone. Sometimes I think the smartphone outsmarts me completely. I don't follow. Uh, so this, we must really be active. We know that those who produce the smartphones, they make them more and more sophisticated. They want to sell them and as much as possible, new models all the time, every half year, new models. Very few of the producers try from the outset, they should start with it, to devise such smartphones and such laptops and such computers as are accessible to all. India has gone a far way in cashless society. Just before the COVID, when I was here, I saw somebody pay at a kiosk up in the country, up in the hilly areas. A kiosk. He was paid with his smartphone. He just photographed some picture there. Later, I learned that was a QR code, and he paid for his whatever he had bought, his package of chips. He paid with it directly. That in Sweden, we have not got to that point yet. Well, in a way, it's impressive, but we have to think of it easy, accessible to everybody. I think that one should be a little cautious. I'm not against the cashless society as such, but I think that before one really goes into that society, one has to think of it that everybody should be able to access it. India. What is there in India? What is it that India can or is contributing? Well, India, as the second biggest country in the world, is contributing an enormous lot of knowledge. And I think, and I'm ashamed in a way to say so, I think that many people, many of my colleagues in the West, they underestimate India's capacity, India's knowledge, India's traditions and history, full of expertise, full of experiences, full of very good trial, error, and results, which the world could and should use and adapt to their realities. I can just mention an example. I think India has succeeded very well, as far as I understood, in the control of this pandemic. Compared to many other countries, India has really succeeded very well. I am impressed. I took part in investigations in Sweden, Citizens Commission on COVID, Corona, and I saw that some of the mistakes that we made were not made in India. If we had listened, if we had taken the example, we could have avoided it. For example, I.A.S was being recommended by the government and by its own ministry. Use it to increase and improve your defense system against the disease. Excellent, excellent. Very, very, very wise to do that. It is not to displace or replace other measures, the vaccines or other medicines by I.A.S. No, but it is a complement that should have been used much, much more in the rest of the world. I'm just now doing a study on medical yoga, therapeutic yoga, how it can be used within the healthcare system. I'm doing that together with the university in the north, the early University near Shimla. They have a department for yoga. And I have gone through literature, I have looked at examples, including the Morarji Desai Institute here in Delhi, how they are using yoga to maintain health. And when health is somewhat threatened or when health is deficient, somebody has a disease, how yoga can be used to heal, cure, and maintain that health. Excellent, excellent. India has that knowledge. that knowledge should be known, that knowledge should be spread in many parts of the world. Why isn't it? Why isn't it? It's partly ignorance. Ignorance, simply ignorance, preconceived ideas. You know, it's terrible. I think that I meet colleagues in Sweden who I show them how you did this. For example, ivermectin was distributed in Uttar Pradesh on a wide scale, and they managed to limit the increase and the surge of this pandemic. It was fantastic. But you see, just because most people in Sweden don't know what is Uttar Pradesh, for one thing. But when I told them that you cannot just ignore if a state with how many 200 million inhabitants in UP or more, it is you cannot just ignore that there is such knowledge. If they use it, you should look at it carefully and and learn from it. So this is one thing I think India can really contribute, and it should be respected. It should be accepted. There is another thing where India, I think, is that is why I to learn yoga, to learn about spirituality. Well, spirituality in Sweden is more or less taboo, so I don't call it spirituality. Well, yoga, okay, yoga is okay, that's okay. Therapeutic yoga is okay, but India is very good at caring, caring. There is a human feeling, there is a human basis of everything. And that is apart from the fact there is poverty, there are old traditions which are obstacles. But if I walk in a crowd in either Kolkata or in Delhi, full of people, I've never seen so many people, never. And they don't even step on my toes. They don't even give me a push, which they do in many other parts of the world. It flows like water. So these are things that we can learn from. These are things that you should be proud of. You should be proud of your tradition. You should be proud of your yoga. Please spread it. Yoga fits into CBR excellently. It fits in. Perhaps not in all countries yoga will be immediately understood or applied. Not in all CBR programs, but CBR being based on the local knowledge, local resources, local culture, naturally can take up yoga. CBR is accessible. CBR is part of this accessibility, which I try to sketch here, and I will stop in a moment. Just to widen the scope of accessibility, I have mentioned the computers and the IT and all that stuff, apart from the wheelchairs. Now I mentioned this. CBR in itself is an accessible knowledge because it is based on local knowledge, local traditions. People understand it. How many understand the cancer therapy in your advanced hospital at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences or medical or Vellore Christian Medical College and Hospital? Those enormous apparatuses. The hospitals themselves are so huge, I would say almost monstrous today, that most people also in Sweden, they almost get frightened. It is something completely alien. But if you go to Ayurvedic practitioner, or if you go to a yoga class, that is perhaps not always, but very often, it is something that is relatively easy to understand, relatively easy to access. It is somehow on your level, on the level of human beings, not on the level of AI or robotics or high tech. It is on the level of people. I am not against technology. There are good things there, but don't let it replace this human aspect where you have a lot of knowledge and a lot of expertise. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, it's a very important thing. What we all need to really look at the policy about the focus on universal design, because universal design is something which is a win-win for everyone. So we cannot really look at separate, segregated, specialized strategies for a small group of children in or even people of different age groups in India. So we have to look at universal design not only with accessibility. We have to look at wide variety of services, universal design in everything from early intervention to education to employment. That is something very important. Thank you, Dr. Gobert Tiroler, for this very enlightening one. I know now I request us to look at what the entire accessibility that is there in the chapter, and how the engineers, how they really look at the entire accessibility in the, it is mentioned in the policy, and we are going to see how the civil engineers, architects, how they are going to apply it. So now I request Sushma to introduce Professor Radhika Gopinath, who comes from totally different sector. From she is from engineering college. I request Sushma to go ahead. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead, Sushma. We can't hear you now. Okay, yeah, please go ahead. I think you have rectified.
Not able to hear her, ma'am.
You are not audible, Sushma. Bhavani?
Unmute herself.
Sushma is not audible.
She has not unmuted herself.
Yeah, Sushma, please unmute yourself.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, no, very
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. Welcome, Radhika, ma'am. I would like to introduce her. She is an academician, researcher, motivator, and budding entrepreneur, freelancing architect. Her education background goes like this. She has a Master's of Architecture from Guru Jambeshwar University, Haryana. She's been a university topper and gold medalist. Dissertation, Special Housing for Senior Citizen in the context of universal design. She also had a Bachelor of Architecture from Madras University, first class, and received Best Student Award on the thesis Eco Hill Resort, Kerala. Some of her professional services are Assistant Professor at PES University, Assistant Professor at Reva University, Freelance Architect, Dream Design Studio, Associate Professor, Himagiri Z University, Visiting Faculty at Dehradun Institute of Technology. She's also an architect with Naveen Architects Design Studio, Project Architect, E2E Prefab Infrastructure, and Consultant cum Manager at MCML Systems, Interior Designer Executive H&R Johnson Private Limited. Some of her achievements are Gold Medalist in Post-Graduation, Young Scientist Award, Vidyagam, Dehradun, Academic Excellence Award, Himagiri Z University, Women Excellence Award, 2020, Universal Achievers, Book of Records, Iron Lady Leadership Program graduated. Thank you, ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much. Very good evening, respected dignitaries. Namaste to all the audience. And I'm very thankful to be here in front of you. And I should really appreciate the audience over here who's been very patiently listening to all the speakers. And I'm very thankful to Dr. Indumathi Rao, ma'am, to give this opportunity to share this platform here. And this is really very special because something which is like I'm passionate about, that is the accessibility. And I could get my mentor, Dr. Indumathi ma'am here, and I'm closely working with her. So it's a big opportunity for me to showcase my insights here in this platform. So with all your permission, I would like to share my screen and start presenting.
Sure.
Hope you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we are here to discuss about accessibility standards and implications for designing buildings in India. Before I would start my presentation, I would like to thank all the eminent speakers who spoke before me, Smt K S Lathakumari ji, and Sri V S Basavraju, Dr. Indumathi Rao ma'am, and Professor Gebert Tiroler. And hearty wishes to you all to take some time and be here, and then sharing your insights to all of us. So there is a announcement here before I get into the subject. So as we were discussing about the draft national policy for persons with disability, you can see accessibility is the one of the chapter that falls under 9. And this is very important because even whenever we design any projects, we try to involve public to get their feedback, and that will really come up with a very successful rate, because when you understand the public, the stakeholders, and the service providers, we can actually bring real changes in the society. So the Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities hereby invites comments from the public on the draft national policy for person. So there is just an announcement for you all. Just go through this document. It is available on the internet, and you can write the feedback to this email ID panda.dk@nic.in and policy.depwd@gmail.com. So with this, I would like to start, and then just to since it is already connected with my subject, I just wanted to brief that under Chapter 9, the Article 9 of the convention deals with the accessibility, and it is very mandatory that we have multiple points which has been covered, that buildings including schools, residential houses, hospitals and workplaces, roads, means of transportation, everywhere we have to make sure that the accessibility is brought in. And not only that, we have to just not concentrate the buildings or the built environment. The total ecosystem need to be developed by concentrating on the transportation system and the ICT. So it is basically accessible information and communication technology. So we have to make sure that more number of people will be benefited, and irrespective of whatever disability they have, and we have to ensure that the accessibility is brought in each and every sector. So that is the main the concept, the point which is there highlighted here. So with respect to transportation, with respect to accessibility features and the transportation, everything need to be covered. So as we were talking about the accessibility or the disability factor, if you see, it is not just the national level; it is a global issue. And universal, UN, United Nations CRPD in 2006, we have already tied up with them, and then we have taken a promise that we have to ensure that accessibility is mandatory in all the public buildings. So, so my dear audience, since you are like from different background, so I'm trying to explain the overall presentation in this way. So basically, I will explain about what is basic accessibility. In fact, I will take you to the different direction altogether. Most of the time, we segregate people and we target as if we are speaking about the different sector or the category of people, but it is not so. Because a disability is something like each and every one will fall prey to it at any kind of circumstances with respect to age or any kind of circumstances. So I'm going to explain you in that way how it is benefited, that if we have a different perception altogether, and how we can achieve it. So these are the list of items. Overview of universal design. I'll talk about how it is efficiently applied, and then what are the current statistics of people with disability and issues and challenges, and what are the campaigns which is already running in India, and how each one of us can contribute to bring changes in the society. And at the end, we can have an open discussion. So I'll be very happy to start with this quote, that is, hold my hand and walk with me. Together we are partners in disability. Our mission is full participation and equality for persons with disabilities in society. Hold my hand and walk with me. Let us strive for a barrier-free society. Let us intensify our efforts in all communities, and let us stand firm for justice and equal opportunities. So, coming to the point, what is basic accessibility means? It is the ability for everyone to reach out to any kind of space or any product or any kind of services. And that is the simple thing. And for any person who is facing any disability or having a disability, they have to really strive very hard to get the basic requirement of accessing any kind of services, which should not be the case, right? So it is a degree to which a product or a service or environment, anything is possible to access. So when we talk about the built environment accessibility, it is basically the physical environment. So you can say, like, I'm like, wherever I'm living, I can actually change all the activities or, the facilities inside my home. But when we go from one place to the other place, even the transportation and the environment where I have to really socialize with the people. So it is not just the place where you're living need to be converted. We have to really make an ecosystem where anybody can move from one place to the other place. So the built environment accessibility, basically the physical environment which benefits everyone. It is not just persons with disability. And we have to make sure the assurance is given with respect to individual health, safety, and the welfare. Okay, so what in the activities, what we are going to perform. And you can see, most of the things are focused more on the public buildings, but it is really mandatory that we have n number of buildings. Like, typologies are so wide, and it is very essential that we have to think about each and everything with a very closer view. Like, we have education system, we have an infrastructure type of building, employment, healthcare, and we have different varieties of buildings where people, like we talked about employment. We have to ensure that accessibility is provided in each and every sector, so that there is no difficulty or barrier, for the people to work or live, or, to move from one place to the other place. So that kind of environment we need to create. So if you see about current statistics about disability in India alone, this is again a very old statistics, but as ma'am was mentioning, statistics, need to be really, revised, and the latest information will really cross the statistics which I'm explaining now. And you can see now we are like, as India, like, we are very proud that we have a young generation, but just mind you that we will be moving to the senior age group very soon. So let us start building a world where, even our future is going to be very happy, and we are going to live even a sophisticated way that everybody take it along with you. So that is very important. And you can see the statistics. India has 12 million blind people, the highest in the world, and we have 7% of Indian population with this, like, people with disability. And children, especially with disabilities, are at a very high rate of dropout, because at the early stage, when we don't detect what kind of disability they are having, and if you don't take care of them at the earlier stage, they may actually fall prey to it. So it is very important that we have to assess them, and then at the right age, and then make sure that we reduce the number of disabilities which people can fall prey to it. So that is also a very important thing. So this, I'm really very happy, because in the initial initial ages, like, we the list of disability was very limited, but now you can see it has been increased to 21. So that means people started concentrating more on it, trying to acknowledge that there are more number of disabilities nowadays. So the perception changes, because we have to really work very hard to understand each and every person, because the requirements of every category will be different. Okay, and the use of spaces, the kind of product. So if we start designing products for every category, it is going to be a very difficult task. So we have to really come up with a product development or a space where maximum number of people can actually use that particular space or a product. So that will really help in future. So if you see with respect to the global level, again, they're emphasizing more on this. That means this is not a very small thing what we are discussing. It's really a very important and the need of the hour that we need to start focusing right now, that it falls under the sustainable development goals, and we need to start bringing more changes in the society. So as a person, in my journey, how I end up knowing about the accessibility is that as a person, when I was just traveling in a bus, there was one a person just sitting next to me. She started asking, what are you and all those things. When I said that I'm an architect, she started asking me several questions like, why do you build such buildings with a glass and this, that? So the idea is when we are actually, are in one profession, each one of us are responsible for what we are supposed to do. So that really triggered my mind, and I asked one question to myself, like what I'm going to do, like after this architecture again, it's a vast or like ocean. So I want to focus my energy to one mission, like what I really wanted to do in my rest of my life. So I decided that the accessibility point of view is really lagging in our country, and I started wanted to know like more about it. So in my master's, my dissertation topic is about special housing for senior citizens in the context of universal design. And that is how I end up in knowing about the universal design. And then I came to know about there is a kind of, apartments we build or the services and facilities we are providing, especially to cater the senior citizen population, because they are the one who is very vulnerable. Because if you see the kind of disability, most of the time with respect to the age group, we may have the kind of difficulty, like with respect to your health factor will really go down. So most of the time it will be like, some people will be using wheelchair, or they'll be physically injured, or they're even impairment with the visual thing also happens. Okay, so so just like that, I thought, okay, just start with elderly people and let us understand what is the statistics. And if it will be, you'll be puzzled to know that even senior citizen, the old age dependency ratio is going to be very high. And you can see in the census as per 2050, they're saying that 7.4% in 2001, and it can actually increase to 12.4% in 2026. So this is the agenda, and that's how I, got into this subject. And as I told you, elderly person, most of the disability it will cover, because different kind of senior citizen will have different kind of disabilities. But the subject is not this, which I'm going to talk about the research or something like that. The point here I want to raise is I started having the the kind of eye-opening thing, which I when I was running through this, I came to know that, okay, the senior citizen housing is there. They are actually deployed in a separate housing apartment, and understanding their age group, they have different facilities. Those who are independent, their houses are given. If they are medically supportive, their assistants are given. So like that, everything was very good, and it was actually based on the universal design. But one thing it asked me, I mean, one thing I started asking question to myself, that why is it that we are segregating people, every time separately? Like, even if you have schools like blind schools, and then any disability is there, we segregate people to that particular space, and we're not letting them to be part of the society. So that thing. And second thing is economical factor. If you see, not everybody can own a apartment like that by spending more money, because in India we have different sectors. We have economical weaker section, lower income group, and middle income group. Compared to the higher income group, we have more number of people who fall under this category. And how are they going to sustain? If so that actually triggered my mind, like what I'm actually doing. So but anyway, I could close that masters, but I started concentrating on asking that question, like what are we supposed to do for that category of people? So you can see the senior living projects in India, there are plenty, and it is basically the model which is actually we try to take from the Western culture, and then we started implementing it. But of course, yes, it is very useful, because for the people or for the children who's going to leave their parents over here in India and they go abroad, so it is very difficult for them to live alone. So they prefer their own community, and so they started investing in this senior citizen housing. So my idea or the focus agenda is here is that if we want to focus for the other category of people, it is very essential that the existing buildings need to be retrofitted, so that most of the senior citizens, they would love to be with their own family members. And if we can just spend more money on that, like just a limited amount, where we can retrofit their toilets, their facilities, so that they can be with us and they can be part of the society. And not only the house dwelling, even the built environment need to be done, so that they can come out to the parks or the open spaces, because that is how India actually, most of the public, they used to live their family like that. So it is very essential in that way. So I started concentrating on that. So the challenge number one is again segregation. It doesn't help. We have to focus more on inclusiveness, and that is the mantra. And I will take you to the other perception altogether. Okay, so if we have, the people who are really facing any kind of disability, we have certain facilities in place with the public places, but how efficiently it has been provided, and is there any standards maintained, or is it really helpful for them? Again, it's a big question mark. So there are a lot many things need to be revived, or it need to be audited. And most of the time, if there is a wheelchair available, but how fast we are able to get it, or whether it is there but it is being locked somewhere. And so there are like so many social problems are there, where how efficiently we are using the already existing things which is there in place. So you will find something which is like intangible, which cannot be put across, like, because as a person, if I have any disability, I don't seek any sympathy from others. Okay, you have to let me do my own job individually without any help of others. But here what is happening is that since we don't create such environment, we are forcibly making them to help, or to forcefully adjust according to the whatever environment is there available. So most of the time, common public, they don't think about others, and they just park the vehicle in front of the access or the main entrance. And even the facility, if you see, that tactile is not placed in the way it has to be erected. And so such kind of the difficulties are happening. So it is very important that each and everything, if the facility is provided, how and what on what basis it has to be there, that has to be really, really intervened. So what is needed is that we need to have a barrier-free environment. We need to provide all facilities in place, which is proper, and so that they also can be part of the society, or not they means every person, like and with respect any age group or any kind of difficulty we face, everybody can fall prey to any kind of disability. So ensure that we have to create an environment so it is inclusive and anybody can be utilize the activities or the spaces the way we want it. So here I'm just emphasizing that audits on yearly basis is very important. What is do's and what is don'ts? That so the main accessible entrance, we have to have accessible reception, so that people, like the proper ramp need to be provided, and even the accessible route, like what I was saying. So it should reach out to the main entrance. It is not that confusing and where the entrance is there, that it has been hidden. And even the accessible staircase. So everything need to be counted, and then we have to have a cross checkpoint on each and everything, that it has to be there. So these are the few examples, and there is a proper access audit checklist also is given. Like in case if you really wanted to improvise your existing the structure or the infrastructure, you can always follow the steps and see whether, okay, if I have a main entrance, is it really accessible? Okay, and the ramp, is it followed by the standard? So anyway, I'm going to explain about the standards and the further things. So there are like guidelines which has been given proper. There's a proper checklist which is there. So before you get into the auditing, like you can always make sure that the infrastructure has been revived and then it is there in place. Of course, like most of the time what happens, you don't know what to do. So sometimes if you are aware about whatever agenda need to be done, so I feel that people will be willing to do and accommodate things in place. So the challenge is proper use of facilities in place, the provided with people with disability. So I'm going to take you to the different perception now. Till now, you can see most of the speakers, they were actually expressing the point, like the people with disability, as we are talking about the different category of people. So I'm going to just change your mindset now here, because it is not that whatever we are doing is for one particular category. We are going to consider that whatever designing space or anything which we are going to do now, everyone is going to be benefited. So that is what I'm going to talk about. That is, anybody can face disability. So that is, it is just people who are born, we generally consider, like if we have any disability, so by birth or something, or there are other, not only the conventional factors, there are many other factors also. It could be because of a disaster, it could be of accident or a social factors, or so many other things are there. Okay, so like say for example, a pregnant woman can't walk very fast or can't climb steps. So it is very important that different age group, when they get into different stages of their life, they fall prey to this disability. So it is very important that we wanted to create a space which is useful for everyone. When we try to change that mindset, that it is not for one particular category, even we will be benefited when we get into that stage. And if we start doing that, then it is going to be a big difference. So that is what the universal design is all about. So it evolves from the accessible design only, but we are actually designing for the diversity. Okay, so it is not just the environment of the building, it is like all three things: products, environment, and the other built spaces also. So you can see here there are three verticals again under the universal design, which is going to be very safe, easier, and it is very more convenient also. Okay, so I will just instead of elaborating it, I'll just take one small example and explain you how the universal design helps. Okay, so you talk about a door handle. Okay, door handle, you have mostly like levers are there, and the knob kind of options are also available. So in that, what is happening is that if anybody whose fingers are not proper, or any kind of difficulty they have, so they are not able to access that knob. Okay, so but if you go for a lever handle, what happens is that you can use any kind of your part of your body, like your limb can be used, your forearm can be used to open the door. And you think the same thing, if I am going to carry a bulk of books, okay, and a bunch of books in my hand, even I prefer lever door is there, so that I can actually easily open with my elbow. So here what is happening, we are not thinking about one particular category, but we are thinking that each one of us will be requiring a easy way to use any product or a space or a community. So that is what the universal design is all about. So as I told you, there are other ways, like, these are the different examples with respect to the built environment, like curbs. Curbs is a very simple design solution. If you have a pathway, you can see in India, like most of the places, pedestrian pathway will be there, which is slightly lifted from the road level. And every time there will be a break in between. So like if you go for a walk also, it's very difficult to get down and then climb. And you think about like you're taking a trolley, and it is very difficult for you to lift it and then put it on the floor. So if there is a curb that is similar to a ramp, but there is no railing in it, so the mild slope which takes to the floor level. So it's easy for everyone, with a wheelchair person also, or people who are carrying with any heavy vehicle trolley also can use the curb in an easy way. Okay, so these are the examples. So again, you can see he's the one who coined this universal design title. So his name is Ronald Lawrence Mace. He's also an architect, but he's no more now. But you can see he himself, is a wheelchair person. He is affected by polio and all those things. So he was a polio victim, and his whole year, like he was actually facing some kind of difficulty. So he decided that how are we going to make this environment? So he coined this word called universal design, which is going to help everyone in this world. And that really amazing. And then, but the point here is, now we are in the year 2022, and this was actually, in the year 1950s, and it's almost 1933, he was program director for Center for Universal Design. But it's taking a lot of time for us to revive it, and then making it to the solution on ground. So that why it is happening, because every person should think that they are responsible. And if we are going to be part of the society. We consider each one of us as our own, brothers and sisters, and we are going to think that they are going to have a difficulty. So let us make such kind of environment so that everybody can be part of the society. So that is very important. So here I'm going to explain you in the international level, the universal design. He has actually listed the overall design aspects into 7 principles. Okay, so that is equitable use, flexibility in use, simple and initiative to use, perceptible information, tolerance for error, low physical effect, size and space for approach and use. Okay, but again, I'm telling you, if we wanted to use the same 7 principles, that's going to be very difficult task for us. Okay, this is the few examples which I can say, like, right hand person or a left hand person using of a scissor is going to be difficult for or a left hand person. So how we can change the design so that anybody can use it. Okay, so that's a kind of example. So for each principle there is a simple logic behind it. But when, with respect to the Indian principles, there is the organization which came forward, and they considered, okay, for India we have to really constrain these 7 principles into 5 principles. Okay, so that is equitable, usable, cultural, economic, and aesthetic. If any space or a product which can falls under this 5 category, it's going to be very successful and we can easily implement it. Okay, and I would like to thank especially this Samatyam organization. They are actually disabled people organization who founded in 1993, and the group or the committee formed under them actually performed a kind of research, and for India they created UDI, that is Universal Design Indian Principles, which caters the 5 principles. Okay, so they are like standalone universal design. They focuses on Indianness and inclusivity as they relate to age, gender, disability, caste, class, religion, poverty, urban, rural background. So everything has been considered. As I told you, the economical factor is a very, very, very important thing which we need to focus on. And as Dr. Indumathi ma'am was also mentioning, that most of them are under the poverty line because there are no employment opportunity. And if they wanted to really improve their status of living, we have to really keep our opportunities open for them to involve in each and everything. If the basic amenities are not provided for them to come out of their house, and what are we going to do? So that is very important, that we have to start changing our mindset. Instead of focusing on one category, let us create a world which is open to all and everyone, irrespective of whatever age group we are in or any kind of circumstances. We are able to use such space in a better way. Okay, so I'm going to take you to the next topic, where the existing campaign and policies in India, and the government has taken a very good initiative. Again, as I told you, for persons with disability, the universal accessibility is critical for enabling them to gain access. So we have, like, under section 44, 45 and 46 category, it provides non-discrimination in transport, non-description on the road and in the built environment respectively. So that rights has been already is there in place, and we have to really implement it. So the implementation part is the key, where we are having a difficulty. So the service providers, the stakeholders are need to really take some crucial decisions here, and the people who are really creative and wanted to give solutions, you are really welcome, because a lot many things to do here. Okay, so you can come forward. And you can see government initiative, and with respect to Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, that is again the inclusive education. So see here again, as I told you, in the school level, that is the age we nurture people mind, right? The children mind. And when we are segregating the people with disability in that stage itself, so when they grow up, how they see it in a different way. So we need to have that inclusive education where everybody can come to school and access. And why are we segregating them? That means we are not providing the facilities. So it is very simple. There are proper guidelines which has been done. We have to just ensure that any school, institution and colleges need to incorporate that and ensure that we are going to apply it. So you can see Accessible India campaign, Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan. And as ma'am was explaining, there's a little change in the external environment would make the circle perfect. So we have to really focus on this SDG goals, and the children, especially, that are just right to education of children with disabilities need to be incorporated, and inclusiveness need to be brought in. And this was already explained to you. We have to form a ecosystem where built environment, transportation, and ICT ecosystem, everything has been taken into consideration. Just a minute, I'm getting a call. Hello, yes. I'm in the, yeah, okay. Yeah, sorry. I think I have taken some time. I will wind up it. There are only limited slides over there. So this is already has been addressed by other people, that in the transportation, with respect to ICT ecosystem, how we are going to bring like accessibility features in the thing. Okay. So I'll quickly brief about the accessibility standards. There are n number of books and the guidelines which is already there. I will just brief about that. So this is one, again, I would like to thank National Center for Promotion for Employment for Disabled People. They have nicely, compared all the 3 guidelines, and they came up with like what were the drawbacks and how we can actually correct it. So accessibility standards, they considered 3 books basically. One is the National Building Code of India, that is NBC, which is a handbook for architects, engineers, those who are going to present, if they wanted to design any buildings, or if you want to get approval for the construction, it is basically we need to follow the guidelines which is given here. And we have harmonized guidelines of and space standards for barrier-free built environment. Then we have CPWD guidelines and space standards for barrier-free built environment. So these are the 3 books, and under which you can see there are international standards also considered. Okay, so in some of the cases, we explain it as a handbook. Somewhere we explain it as a standard, like ISO considered as a standard. So what is happening is that if it is a guidelines, it is not mandatory. But as soon as when we stress on standards, then it is mandatory to follow. So if you see the books, like, all the category which explains about the walking paths, ramps, what should be the handrail, staircase, doors, everything has been covered, and it has been nicely classified, and then has been, the observations and recommendations also made. In fact, what I did is I started explaining each and every guidelines and what are the basic information you will get it. So the people who are going to provide infrastructure or going to retrofit your things, you can easily refer to these books and then understand how you can actually make up. So you can see here the disabilities which are being considered here is non-ambulatory, semi-ambulatory, sight and hearing. So based on that, the guidelines have been properly given. And you can see the classification of the buildings. As I told you, there are different typologies, and we have to more focus on these public and semi-public transportation and the special areas, like as we were talking about village settlement, old build-up, heritage, again, heritage and conservation, where the whole community need to really go and visit. So we need to make sure that accessibility need to be brought in that. So you can easily refer to all these guidelines and understand what need to be brought out. So similar way, academic institutions, yeah. So this I like to add a point here that, when I was actually teaching, I make sure that I try to give a project to every student and ensure that they have to understand the guidelines and apply universal design guidelines in whatever project which I'm going to give. So that is also mandatory as per CPWD. The academic institutions also, recommends that to happen. So you have one more guidelines called harmonized guidelines and space standards. Even that also explains about the basic standards, and you can see how the usage of tactile, like which I was actually explaining, giving an example also. So the proper way, we have all the facilities, but the thing is the implementation need to be done, and somebody need to supervise us and check it, that whether the person with disability are really helping or getting help with the facility which we are going to provide. So for that, the standards will really give hand. So you have to just refer to these books, and each and every category, it is properly given what should be the sizes, dimensions need to follow. And this will really help. So this is the for the vertical thing where we have a chair lift, so that they don't need to efforts, because the effort which you put in, like, taking a ramp, and that will be a double effort. So it will be too long rather than a staircase. So instead, if we go for these kind of things, and it will be very easy for them to climb. So similar way we have for lift size, the toilet with the railing and everything. And this comes to the NBC. So the third book which I was talking about, again, this is the model code. And like every government buildings, public works department, any construction department need to really follow this. And we have Annexure B here, anthropometrics and specific requirements for barrier-free buildings and built environment, which concentrates more about all these accessibility, the standards and everything. So the service providers and stakeholders, you can always refer to these kind of books. So the challenge here, I just wanted to put across that every school, institutions providing facilities to accommodate children with disabilities is mandatory. And yeah, so again, we have 3 guidelines for schools and institutions. We have CBSE inclusive education, AICTE, and then we have guidelines for all buildings. The schools and institutes, please make sure that you refer to these wonderful books. A lot of study has been put in. There are, like, the kind of research which went through, like, it took a lot of years. And then you have to just refer to these guidelines and ensure that you are incorporating that to bring inclusive education. So, which explains about breaking free environment, barrier-free environment in school, right to education, how the facilities can be provided. Everything is being listed here.
Thank you, Radhika. We'll be sharing your PowerPoint, and they will be also reaching out to you for more guidance, especially on the universal design. So we really thank you very much for because of the time constraint, because they also have a lot of questions.
Yes.
I really thank you for. Very rarely we bring people from non-disability sector, but today we decided to bring someone from non-disability sector, because I really see the kind of approach is quite different, because you are not stuck with the disability. You are looking at the universal design and making more common sense, I would say, common sense in designing. So thank you very much for that. I'm sure you are also looking at wide variety of things. We'll upload on IRIEC website. Please have a look at the IRIEC to see all the PowerPoint of all the speakers.
Yes, ma'am. I'll just take just one more minute to wind up the things that, yeah, I'll just go through, run through all the slides. So basically, I was expressing that we have more number of guidelines for every typology, like ma'am was saying, for airports, for ports and everything. So I just want to conclude here that, as a person, as an individual, if I could able to go beyond my limits and see what I could actually wanted to do, make some difference in the society by, concentrating on a startup idea, or, bringing awareness to the students or the public. So as a stakeholders or as a person, if you are really wanted to bring some change, you can do wonders. Okay, so I think if, instead of fighting as an individual, if we form a community together, if we work together and make sure that we can bring a beautiful environment in future. So that's the wonderful part. So I'm working closely with CBR Network. We are requesting you, like, if you have any comments or anything, you can easily write down to us, and we'll be really helping you how to bring changes in the society by, referring to these guidelines. We will try to help you out in changing the infrastructure based on the requirements. Thank you so much for giving this.
Thank you. It's a million thanks for this value addition. I want to share with you, like I made a comment, like giving a wheelchair to a person in rural area, we are making them more disabled. So when we had this concern in CBR, I approached the PS Institute of Technology, one of the premier engineering colleges, and shared with them, you do so much, can you design a wheelchair where the seat can go up and down to different levels? The mechanical engineering, they say it's such a simple technology. Why did you ask that earlier? It was as simple as that. Within 2 weeks, they came out with a wheelchair design with hydraulic and mechanical jack system where the floor went to the ground level. So, in fact, we also presented in the science and technology mission. But what happens is nothing really goes beyond prototype. So we're also looking at this aspect of in the policy document, like how do we really come out with more research and application, taking from prototype to something which is available across the market. So people will be able to get assistive devices, which is really required rather than what is available.
Correct.
So these are some of the issues. So thank you very much, Radhika ji.
As
I said, the policy needs none of us are as good as all of us. We had Professor Parashivamurthy, who was deaf blind, and he was an English teacher. Like he always said this, none of us are as good as all of us. And he always said, I don't have sight, and most people, they don't have insight. So all this is always in my mind. I always remember that. So it's very important in this initiative. We request everyone please visit the Google Drive which we have shared, and please put in your points under the different chapters and focus areas, because just discussing is not going to help, because we want to send this document to Prime Minister's office at the earliest. So please work on that. The Government of India is also looking for our practical suggestions, and please share it. And before sharing, please talk to families, please talk to people with disabilities, and then talk to service providers. So when I say that in that order, I know I do it consciously, deliberately, intelligently. So please, whoever is in touch with you, please discuss with them. They are going to throw a lot of light on what a sensible policy should look like and what it should contain. So with this brief sharing, I request those who wanted to ask questions, now the forum is open. Please go ahead. Who wants to go first? Please, it should
Dr.
be
Suresh wanted to speak.
concerning the policy.
Yeah.
We don't want questions other than policy. Concerning questions, policy, if there's something which we have left out, please share with us right now.
Good evening, madam.
Good evening, doctor. Yeah.
Good evening, sir. Actually, this is very informative, and also it helped us to think further and make our point very clear to bring change in the policy. So I would like to say on behalf of patients with genetic blood disorders, which is recently included under the Act. So number one, the diagnostic criteria for issuing UDID card is, there are a lot of confusions, lot of overlapping. I think that is one point. That is one point which is main bottleneck in UDID recruitment for hemophilia, thalassemia, and sickle cell disease. That is one. And number two, as Madam pointed out, the benchmark disability chapter, because even hemophilia is a preventable disability, but progressive disability. So that's why denying the facilities under benchmark disability is not justifiable, because if you, as Madam told, the mild to moderate disability, one day I think we become eligible for the benchmark disability, which is not good. In the prevention of disability also, we should be given more importance in these disorders. And also I found, because we are trying to work on the UDID card registration, and even among our medical and paramedical professionals, the certification process is lot of problems are there. So I think we need to simplify, and also the criteria to include under the disability. For example, hemophilia, there are 3 different hemophilia further. So
I request Doctor to be brief because of the constraint of time. Please,
I think I will send it. I will send it.
Kindly share it in the Google Drive, because we want each and every point to go there in
Yes,
a
madam.
way where the government can use it.
Yes, I am sending it. Thank you for your enlightening. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Sir.
Any other concern related to Gadkari ji is there, Lokaya ji is here. So any concern about the policy? Anyway, the policy is not in Indian languages, even it is not there in Hindi. So, I mean, it's not there in Kannada. So we have requested the government to translate into Kannada. It's very important because unless we have a policy which people can understand, just having it in English is not of much use. But we have very limited time. We have already requested for extension of time. Let us see whether that is going to come through. But please use the Google Drive to share your valuable suggestions. Every suggestion is very, very important. And please discuss with the primary stakeholders, parents and people with disabilities, and share with us what is that that has to go into that. And once we finalize it, we are going to share with all the participants and share it with you. Please have a look at it, and then we are going to submit this to the PMO office as well as the ministry, okay, to take it forward. So if there is any other concern, I request Bhavani Sushma to share the link for people to submit their suggestions. Bhavani? The website where you can get this recorded one is the www.inclusionbharat.org. This is IRIEC website. You can see the videos of video recording of the entire presentation and also PowerPoint. Okay. So I request Bhavani to copy paste the link once again. ಇನ್ನು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ವ್ಯೂ ದೊಡ್ಡದು ಮಾಡಕ್ಕಾಗತ್ತಾ? Bhavani, we are unable to see. Can you enhance the view?
Also, you can type it in message, Bhavani.
In message, you can type the link. Yeah.
Link.
Bhavani Sushma, yeah, please act quickly. Yeah. Okay. Seems there is some problem for Bhavani. Okay. No, she has.
She has sent the link.
Yeah, she has already pasted the link. So
Copy pasted, yeah. She copy pasted.
kindly click on that. You will see the format. The format basically contains the chapters and the key issues what we have raised, the key groups of people starting from 0 to 99 plus, and various key areas. So please give your suggestions. Why we are using this approach is if we start sending the individual suggestions, it is not possible, and I don't think people will see all the suggestions and take it into account. So to make something doable, because I always talk about a policy which is doable, implementable. So we are putting it in a Google Drive. So when you are typing it, you can see others. So please don't repeat the same suggestion. That is my request. So say something which is new and different, so that we will be sharing in a consolidated way to the government, and that will help us to also follow it up and see whether these suggestions are implemented in the policy. Otherwise, it becomes too difficult, like we have seen that in NEP. So we don't want that to happen. So let us use it the Google Drive. Thank you. Gadkari ji, would you like to say something? It is muted. Your microphone is muted. Kindly unmute your microphone. ಕೇಳಿಸ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅವರಿಗೆ. Gadkari ji, we can't hear you. Please unmute your microphone. Okay. I think this is also part of aging. We also have
Uh,
also started experiencing this problem. So anyway, so we are. Aloka, would you like to share?
Hello,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Gadkariji. Now we are.
am I audible now?
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, we can hear you, sir.
Okay. No, I have already written something about the policy about 2 weeks ago. I can share that with the group. I'll send it to Google this thing. But the only thing which I would like to express here as my serious concern is everything is very fine. The draft, the draft policy has been drafted very well, and the intentions are very, very pious and good. But where is the wherewithal? The money, the resource, that is my most serious concern. Because as you know, that right now,
Good evening, ma'am. This is Bhuvaneshwari. The
even the
link is not
draft,
opening, ma'am.
hello?
Yeah. Yeah. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. No, even the draft admits at one place that the allocation of funds for the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment is 0.039% of the GDP. And if you go by the total allocation, the percentage of total allocation, it comes to 0.0031% of the total budgetary allocation of the central budget. Secondly, I would also point out that in January 2021, the government has come out, the central government has come out with a directive through the Finance Ministry Expenditure Department that each ministry must cut down their budgetary expenses or their expenditure by 30%. And in that, even our ministry is not exempted. There again, there were schemes which are still not implemented, fortunately. But there is a proposal to abolish national trust or merge it or give its functioning to the ministry. All that kind of thing is there. And with this kind of situation, with all good intentions, good drafting of the policy and all that, my serious concern is where we are going to get the finances for implementing all these very, very good suggestions which are there in this document. That is my serious concern. I won't take more time now for
Thank you,
saying.
Gadkariji. We are also concerned about all three M's, no? Money, manpower, and materials and time. So because it is so important, because just having even the best policy, with the best language, with best everything, especially in disability sector, no, it's without money. Like you have already quoted that the lowest figures one can have in the GDP allocated for people with disabilities. So we have to really look at very innovative ways of mobilizing the money. So we have some solutions based on the Karnataka experience. So let us look at those solutions and share it with the rest of the country. So if there are no other suggestions, we would like to close this conference, and we thank everyone for sparing your valuable time, and especially the speakers, Smt Lathakumari, I.A.S, who is now the Director for Disability Department in Karnataka, and Professor Dr. Basavraju, and Dr. Goverment who is from Sweden and who is in India now, stalwart in the field of disability, And we have Radhika, who has given a very good different dimension into where we understand. We were just looking at who could have corrected some language, here and there. No, that is not the way to say, blind school. But I feel, just going into this crossing T's and dotting I's, we are losing of the very essence. So it is so important to bring in multi-sectoral coordination rather than just people in the sector talking about it. So that is why I was insisting on multi-departmental coordination that has stayed as a dream. So unless we have that, there are both resources and implementation is going to affect very seriously. So thank you very much. Please share your all valuable suggestions. We are going to consolidate that and put it back on the Inclusion Bharat website, and also we are going to share it with you, and let us really hope for the best. So thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Yeah.